All right, what's happening? Ward Wrestling Live here with number 4, man. It's like the good old days, like 3, 4 months ago. We were knocking 4 out a day with great people in the wrestling world. I'm over here. I'm usually upstairs. It's easier to do this, but we are going live. So I've got the great Brian Preece and Dan Blanchard with me tonight. If you don't know who they are, look them up. You'll know who they are. Dan Blanchard up top was the junior world team coach. He is also has a child that's coming up in the wrestling world. He was blogging. He's always coaching with his kid. He ends up meeting Mr. Brian Preece, who there's a long biography for him. It's a little bit longer for the wrestling world, but if you go up and Provost, Utah, and you look him up and you look his lineage up, and you'll see a longtime member of the wrestling family as well. And they found each other and they wrote this great book called Hitting the Mat, The Making of a Champion, right? Or The Making of a State Champion, or The Journey of a State Champion. One of those. And they're here with me.
The Making of a State Champion, or at least a real good man.
Yes, and
I think that very last part's important.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy to have you guys on. So welcome. Thank you for coming on. It's obviously an honor to have you. And we've got you live, and we need to send you around. So what I'll do, I'm gonna kind of share you with all the groups around the country so they see this amazing book and how to get it. But tell us a little bit about about your background, how you met, how you came up with this idea. I mean, what a great idea for a book.
Okay, cool. I mean, me and Brian have actually never met. It was the funny thing. We got a mutual friend, Scott Schulte, the New York Times bestseller of the Dan Gable's book, put us in touch with each other. We've never met. We wrote a book together. But just real quick, I'll say a little something about me, and then Brian can say a little something about him. It's a really cool team we got here. I'm over here in the East Coast in Connecticut. Brian's out west in Utah. I'm right now the father of a wrestler, and I'm also his coach. So, and when Brian talks to you, he'll tell you, he has like the opposite dynamic going around. I grew up as a pretty good wrestler. I did pretty good. I was a 2-time state champ, wrestled twice in the Junior Olympics, went back later and twice the coach. I've coached at all different levels. I've done all sorts of different things in this sport, and it's been really cool. And, then for a while, I just tried to be a father. I just wanted to be a father and be the best father and be the best man and raise the best kids and, have my boy, slowly develop into a good man someday. And then he just came out and said he wanted to wrestle. And it shocked me because I always knew wrestling is something anybody can do, but it's not for everybody. So I wasn't going to force my boy to wrestle. I never even talked to him about wrestling. And then he's getting ready to go to high school and he says, Dad, I want to wrestle. So I'm like, all right, let's go check it out. So he goes and wrestles. He likes it. He gets hooked on it. He's wrestling. His second year, he's like, hey, him and his friends are like, why don't you be our coach? So now I'm one of the coaches. And during all this, I'm trying to be like off to the sideline, just documenting it. Like in a blog, I started a wrestling blog and it went awesome. And people from all over the place were like, do we love your blog? And I was just like, oh, maybe I should make it into a book if people love it so much. And then, like I said, Scott Schulte called me and he's like, Dan, he goes, I've been like following your blog, love it. You should tell your son to work on cradles and work on leg riding. And I'm like, dude, he's like cradling a kid right now. You know what I'm saying? So it was like wild, but he put me in touch with Brian Preece, and me and Brian Preece, we hit it off, and it's been a great team that we have. So Brian, why don't you say a little something about your end?
Well, I call myself Dan and Daniel, the jack of all trades in wrestling. So I've been a coach, official, competitor. I think most of the youngsters in the Utah wrestling community now know me best as the media guy, the all-knowing guy writing for the newspaper and thing like that for covering wrestling. But I was a head coach for 12 years. And like I said, I dabbled in officiating. I've ran some big wrestling events in Utah, one of the largest JV tournaments in the nation. So I do a lot of different things, but I grew up wrestling. My father was one of the most famous wrestling coaches in Utah, Dennis Preece. He won 9 state titles in 12 years at UNA High School, which is one of the dominant programs in Utah still today.
He didn't set the bar too high for you.
Yeah, and my sister's won 6 state titles as a volleyball coach. So I am definitely the weakest coach of the Preece clan. Yeah, the bar was set high, but I'll tell you, I read Daniel's blogs, and it just kind of made me think of just different memories of wrestling for my father. And there was a lot of intense pressure to do well. And I could say that growing up as a kid, I didn't really like wrestling all that much all the time. And then I sat down, I think, and I relayed the story in the book, is I sat down with him about my 9th grade year and said, I'll wrestle for the school. That's it. I'm not going to do freestyle. I'm not going to do club. I'll do what I call November to February wrestling, and I am done. And then I'm off golfing, skiing, hanging with my friends, working my job at the grocery store. And something happened. I actually started enjoying wrestling a bit. And then I went into teaching and coaching, and that's kind of where I'm. And then 35 years later, here I am.
It's amazing how much I've heard that. I mean, even girls and boys, they'll be like, I was 12 years old and I thought I'd never do it. And then I went to one practice and it was just, that was it. I never wanted to leave it. It was my girlfriend, it was like my boyfriend. I just found him and that was it.
Mine was just kind of an opposite thing in a sense, because I got drug around to these meets because my dad ran the Little League program too. So I was there whether I wanted to be there or not. And then when I got a little bit older, I just said, this is it. I really enjoy wrestling for my colors, for my high school, and hanging out with the friends and stuff like that. But, and now, like I said, it was a less is more moment for me. And then I really fell back in love with the sport and all the good things wrestling does for a person.
That's awesome. So Dan, so you're blogging. I mean, you're just basically just, I guess these days people would be vlogging it with the video, right? They'd be vlogging it. So basically you're doing the same thing I've done. I have a YouTube channel that I don't really market, but it's one for Daniel, my older one. And I've stored every one of his matches there that he's ever wrestled. And,
cool.
So it's basically, you were doing the writing version of what I was doing. You're saving all the memories in a blog, and you're writing what he was doing, and you're writing what you saw, what you think he could have done better. I'm sure you're putting down notes for yourself, and it's just becoming a visual for people to see the direction of growth that your child is going through, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I had a teacher one time, I think he said something, maybe Hawthorne might have said something like, I never really know what I think about something until I write about it. And that's kind of where I am. So if I could back up a little bit, like I went through that journey as an athlete. I know what it was like to be a wrestler, to get beat up and to find my way to the top, claw, fight, and scramble to the top. I know what that was like. And then I know what it was like as a coach, to go through it and talk to fathers about their sons, or maybe daughters. I know what it was like as a coach. But I got to tell you, when it became my turn to be the father on the side or in the stands and watching my son go through it, it was a totally different ball game. And I don't know what made me pick up the pen and start like just taking notes. And I mean, I had like a pen and a little notebook in my pocket where I would take little notes, during practices, wrestling practices that I was watching, or matches or tournaments or whatever that I was watching. I'd be taking little notes and then going home that night or getting up real early the next morning and just writing pages and pages upon, what was going through my head. And it made me really think deep about what it was like to be the father of a young boy. And it was all new for him. It was all new for me being the dad. And I thought a lot. I thought very deep on about the whole like wrestling, using it as a vehicle to like create character, build character, and build a better man. And man, am I just so glad that I did that now. And I took up the pen, started writing, and then eventually, got on, did the blogs, got a following. People were just falling in love with it. And, I was writing, profound stuff about building a good young man through the sport of wrestling. And very fortunate to have found Brian Preece as well, because we come at it from such different angles. Like Brian's already retired. I'm 51. I fell in love with wrestling right away. Brian's dad was in the picture for most of the part. My dad wasn't in the picture. And I remember I went to one wrestling practice right before my freshman year in high school, went to a second wrestling practice. I knew like 3-4 moves. And I went to a wrestling tournament on Saturday and won the tournament, took first place. So I was like, I'm hooked. I'm like in a few months when I'm a freshman, I'm wrestling. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that was that. And my son, the same sort of thing. It was like September, we bought him the preseason. He tried a couple wrestling practices out. He's like, Dad, I love it. You know what I'm saying? So I didn't have a father in the picture driving me, and I wasn't the father in the picture driving my son. You know what I'm saying? So me and Brian come from totally different places, but we kind of fall into the same path. I mean, we both became educators, coaches, and tried to be real good fathers.
Well, it's the one thing that I've learned, and it's one thing that I've learned so much about wrestling is you could be from two different worlds, but it brings so many great people together. So now I'm guessing that your stories met Brian's stories, and together your stories kind of made this book, right?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Like I'm sorry, Brian. I threw in my story, and Brian, he's got such a wealth of like knowledge and experience that anything I say, he can come back with amazing stuff.
Brian, what do you think of all these accolades he's throwing upon you?
Well, that's nice. Daniel's he's a good man, and but I think his story is the driving story. His story with his boy Dakota, and my part of the book is kind of a reaction to Daniel's stories. Daniel will send me the blog post for that week, and I'll read it a couple times, and then it'll just bring up a memory. And like I say, for the fans of the of the book, Daniel's and Dakota's stories is unique, and my stories are unique, but mine is a sort of reaction to Daniel as I read his blog and the memories it'll bring up. And some of them are of me coaching, and some of them are me as a competitor, wrestling for my father, or my 1-year foray as a bad college wrestler, so there's a whole bunch of different things. So I hopefully, the Utah fans will learn a little bit more about my father, and a little bit more about me, as they learn a lot about Daniel and Dakota, and that father-son dynamic.
And it's great. Who do you think is best? Who needs to have this book in their hand, and why? If you're talking about your book right now, and there's athletes out there listening, or sport parents out there listening, or
dads of wrestlers, that's an easy answer for me anyway. Dads of wrestlers, and I guess there are a lot of moms are involved too, but you hear Daniel's stories with Dakota. Dakota fought a lot of injuries his sophomore year and his freshman year, and losing the weight, and being a student athlete, and parents need to know what their kids are going through. Wrestling is a really unique sport. It's the toughest sport to me in the world because of two things: because of the whole body demands of it, getting beat up, and it's almost like running a mile with somebody on your back, right? But at the same time, the nature of the competition, it's totally one-on-one. When somebody goes to a dual meet, they know exactly who won that match and exactly who lost. And nothing against like a cross-country meet, because cross country is a great sport. But you finish 15th in a cross-country meet, that's pretty good. But people don't know what does that mean, 15th? But how many competitors were there? But on that dual meet, on Thursday night, they know who won and who lost. And a lot of young men and women, they can't really take that. There's this enormous pressure with being a wrestler. And since my dad was a famous wrestler, I felt a lot of pressure. I better win.
Yeah.
So how do you, Dan,
Can I piggyback, Dan? Can I piggyback on that real quick?
Yeah.
I fully agree with Brian. Anybody who's wrestling, any fathers of wrestlers, that's absolutely the primary, the niche. But the secondary niche or secondary market would be like the family of the wrestler. And I would say definitely particularly the mother, because many mothers are worried about their sons, being hurt, especially if they go to a match and they don't understand it and their kid's shoulders way up like that, they're being twisted and bent. So many mothers get worried and they kind of don't really want, they're afraid their boy's going to get hurt. So they hesitate. The boy comes home and says, I want to wrestle. And the mothers many times hesitate and say, I don't really want you wrestling. But the thing is, in most cases, your boy's going to be fine. He's going to feel some pain, maybe a lot of pain, but he's going to be fine. And he's going to build him into the man that the mom wants him to be. So the mothers, most mothers are not aware of this. So that would be the secondary market.
And I can say too, just to piggyback here is, Daniel's wife, maybe she was probably in a different place than my mother, who was the wife of a wrestling coach. So it was kind of like, she knew a little, more about what to expect with injuries and weight loss and things like that. But as I kind of read through Daniel's blogs, mom wasn't always right, Daniel, always sure that this was the best thing.
She was worried.
My boy is starving to death, or he's, what's going on here?
Yeah. So I mean, what's so we don't want to read the book to everybody, obviously, but what is one of your favorite stories that you look back at that's in that book that you're like, wow, I remember that day, I remember that match, I remember that moment, or I remember that time.
You know what, Dan? I think that in the beginning of hitting the mat, something very special takes place. I'm driving my son preseason, a couple days a week. I'm driving him to a wrestling club that's about 45 minutes away. So twice a week for 45 minutes there, 45 minutes home, I have a captive audience with my son. And just the two of us are talking about what it means to wrestle, what it means to suck it up, what it means to be a real man, and there was so many life lessons in those 45-minute car drives, is in the car where my son couldn't run away or go play video games and tune me out. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It was just in him. That was it. And I really, really loved that part of our time together. And I love that part of the stories as well in the wrestling book of Hitting the Mat. I think that he was able to grow as a person a lot just from the time we spent in those car rides. And they weren't quiet time. We were talking the whole way through. And it usually started off because he was very excited about wrestling. Or, Dad, did you see I built my base better today? I was actually able to get an escape from that kid. And that would just lead into a really cool conversation about being a good man somehow. So I thought that was really cool. What were you thinking, Brian? Was there something that stuck out to you?
Yeah, and I loved that, Daniel's and Dakota's car ride conversations. I'll tell you, for me, mine most memorable experience with my father came more as an adult. And I shared it in the book when I was having a kind of a tough time with a relationship with a girl I really wanted to marry at the time. And it wasn't working out well. It was like, I really relate to that movie, 500 Days of Summer. Okay. I was like Tom in that movie, for those who've seen the movie. And my dad noticed that I was just really having a rough time. I remember we almost came to blows. I wanted to leave the house, and he said, Brian, I want you to stay. And he ran across the street and got this psychologist that lived across the street and brought him back to the kitchen. And I was the good son, and I stayed and waited. And I talked with the psychologist. Didn't really help me one iota, really. But what I realized was the depth of my father's love for me. Yeah, I mean, here's a guy with a large ego who pretty much thought he knew everything, and he realized he didn't know everything, and that's why he went across the street to get the neighbor. But it just showed the depth of his love for me, and I'm going to probably start tearing up and crying. But and he gave me some real good advice that's going to come out in book 2 that I'm going to share in one of the chapters. That eventually led me to the woman I'm married to now.
Success.
But that was kind of to me a very precious memory of my father and I that I shared in the book. It wasn't a wrestling story; it was just more of a human father-son moment,
Yeah.
where I just realized the depth of his love for me.
And if I could jump on top of that, Ryan, I mean, that story came from the story I was sharing about Dakota struggling with a girl, my struggles during a wrestling season with a girl during a match. And then you just were able to piggyback on that easily. But it kind of goes to show that even big, mean, tough wrestling coaches made out of steel still can have a heart and be loving fathers and loving men. Recently, my old wrestling coach, who was a bear of a man, tough as they come. He had like a tryout to play linebacker for the New York Giants back in the day, being a wrestling football player. My son met him, and my son was like, wow, I wasn't expecting that. I mean, he's like a nice, soft-spoken guy. My son was expecting some guy to rock the world, with a loud booming voice and big tough demeanor. But my coach, when he spoke to Dakota and he was speaking to me, he was just speaking like, a very kind, gentle man. So, there is that two sides of big, tough men.
Man, that's awesome. And you weren't just a wrestling coach, right? I mean, you've experienced coaching on all different levels, right, Preece?
Yeah, I'm a baseball. I've coached baseball for a lot of years, football for a lot of years, golf even, and I love all those sports. I think they all have different elements that are just great. To me, like football, there's nothing funner than doing the football game, the game itself, just everything that goes with it. The baseball, I love the sort of some of the quieter moments, the sounds of the game, and matching wits with somebody. And golf, I just love the nature and you versus the course and you versus yourself. And what I enjoyed as a wrestling coach is just the practices. I enjoyed the practices and seeing your wrestlers pick something up and learn and grow and things like that. Because in a football game, there's going to be a winner and a loser. In a wrestling tournament, if you have a good team, 1/3 of your wrestlers are still going to lose that day. Then
What do you think
2/3 of
makes
them
it
might be
different?
winning.
You being around all these athletes, baseball athletes, football athletes, golf athletes, and obviously with the book and everything, what makes wrestling so different that it becomes a vehicle that we all know as wrestling is life, and it becomes life that these other sports don't do, or
Well, I
don't
think
see the same type of personality come out of them?
I think for sure it's just the demands of it. You're just the grind of a practice, and then you're not going to you're not going to be drinking water that night or having a tiny meal, and then you come back the next day. And then again, like I said before, just the nature of the competition. It's just you and another guy, and it's really hard to lose. People see who lost the match, and and who won the match, and that I've had football players, big strong football players, all state, all region football players tell me, I can't handle this, coach. I can't handle the pressure. They sometimes I've had a couple just actually just admit that to me, coach. I can't handle this, and it doesn't mean that they weren't good boys, grew up into good men. They just it's just wrestling is like Daniel says, it's for anyone, but it's not for everyone. And you got to be able to have that mindset to pick yourself up after a loss, and and, get back up there and do it again. And it's like very, very hard sport, from the practices to the natures of the competition. I don't think there's a sport that's going to prepare you more for life than wrestling.
That's awesome.
Totally
Like I said, and I've coached 4 sports, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
each sport,
Where
each
can
sport
we,
has its unique. One thing I could say good about baseball is, like, there's a lot of, you got to sort of act in your self-interest, but also within the framework of the team. Sometimes you got to sacrifice, you got to, give up personal glory and bunt the ball to move the guy over and give up your chance for, to hit the home run.
and listen, as hard as wrestling is to
Yeah.
do, as hard as wrestling is to do, I still think the hardest thing in sport is to hit a fastball.
Oh yeah, I mean, it was a skill.
That may be tricky,
That's
or a
skill
curveball.
for sure. Yeah.
A
That
curve,
may be
a baseball. I mean,
Yeah.
not when you're
If I
in
could
little league.
piggyback, Dan, if I could piggyback on what Brian was saying and what you're saying, I agree. It's very tricky to hit that fastball and curveball. And I agree with everything that Brian was saying. I too have coached multiple sports. And the very unique thing about wrestling, again, is everything Brian's saying. And just, I mean, the extreme sacrifice, as Brian was alluding to, you take this sport home with you, what I'm saying, with what you can eat. And you got to run again that night, work out again at 5 a.m. the next morning. You take this sport home with you. Other sports don't do that as much. And you create this real brotherhood, what I'm saying, this real bond with your teammates. Maybe some people say misery love company, but when you're in, you're like a brother in arms, a brother in combat. I was in the Army too. I was infantry soldier front line, and it's the same sort of thing. You got that brotherhood in the Army. You got that brotherhood, as wrestlers. You guys are friends for life because of what you've been through. Some people might want to maybe you can compare it a little bit to the police department or the firemen. You got that brotherhood, that bond where those guys stick together. But wrestling is that. I mean, you endured what you endured, and it creates a brotherhood and friendship for life. So there's definitely a way that wrestling's different than other sports.
And not just with your teammates, with your competitors. I am Facebook friends, with 3 of the 5 other guys that placed with me at state my senior year.
How cool is
I'm
that?
friends with these guys, because I know that they were going through the war in their room, their wrestling room, like I was going through it in my room. And I have the utmost respect for them. And it's really unique. And I have a lot of friendships still with the wrestlers I coached. And like Daniel said, it's something to that brotherhood. It never goes away. And and it doesn't matter if you're an All-American. I worked out with the guy who won the Dapper Dan, and I'm sure everybody knows what that is in the wrestling world. And I've coached kids that took them 4 years to win a match. I mean, literally win a match, and they never gave up. And I have huge respect for a kid to go through almost 2-3 years of losing every match, and then they still come back.
So where do we, Dan? Where if our listeners are out there and they're listening to this, where can we purchase your book at? Where can we find your guys' book at? And when should we expect the second one?
Okay, so if they go to Amazon, just look up Hitting the Mat, or even just Google, Google, Dan Blanchard, author, go to my website page. It's there. They can find it. I'm sure, they can find it at major distributors. But probably the easiest thing would be go to Amazon. You'll see it right there. I'm saying, on my website page, danblanchard.net or granddaddysecrets.com. Right now, me and Brian are working on the second book, and we decided that we're going to do a trilogy. That we spent a lot of time on Dakota's freshman year. We're going to spend a lot of time, I think, on the senior year, and we're kind of combining the sophomore, junior year in our second book. So Dakota's sophomore year was, my son Dakota's sophomore was last year, and we pretty much got a nice working rough draft already done with that. And then right now, in the middle of this COVID time, is my son Dakota's junior year. So we got to see how this plays out. We'll probably have it done. This second half of the book done maybe late spring, early summer. We'll probably could be hitting the bookstores and Amazon probably by this summer with the second book.
The
and then
first one is your son up through freshman year.
Freshman year.
Nice. And we're
Yeah,
going to continue
second
to
book,
see.
sophomore, junior year.
Nice, nice. And then senior year to state champ.
Would be the
right?
third book. Yep.
That's
We'll
going to be
spend a
great.
little more time on that year.
All right. Well, I have a few questions for you guys. Are you guys ready for this?
Yeah.
Sure.
Do we like glazed donuts or chocolate cake donuts?
Both.
Both. Both
I
is
was
good.
thinking the same thing.
Those
Brian.
are my two favorite kinds of
Both
donuts.
is good.
Hilarious.
Both is good. Both is
Yeah,
good.
both sounds good.
You guys prefer ankle picks or high C's?
I think I like ankle picks.
Me as well.
Israel, perfect. Hey, so let's
But
say,
I coached the high C, but as a move to do as a wrestler, ankle pick.
you guys go French fries or tater tots?
Oh, French fries.
Fries mostly.
Fries
I
mostly.
don't mind tots. I'm a big man. I don't
Yeah,
mind.
I don't mind. Mix them together for me. Throw some bacon on there. I'm good, right?
Bacon is good.
Yeah.
Bacon and cheese.
No doubt.
You guys coach the half or the cradle?
I'm a half Nielsen guy.
Yeah, definitely more of a half Nelson guy.
I like it. You guys go hot coffee or iced coffee?
Oh, hot coffee.
I'm a Mormon, so I avoid coffee.
No coffee for you.
It's against the word of wisdom.
That's the word of wisdom.
Those are the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. They'll know that one.
They don't allow coffee there, huh?
Yeah, it's not something. And I've tried coffee before and I didn't like it.
And that's okay.
I'll be better off.
Hot chocolate.
Arm throw, arm drag.
Ooh, that's a good one. Both.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm an arm drag guy.
all right, here we go. Lucky Charms or Captain Crunch?
Oh, Captain Crunch.
I'm crunch berries.
Crunch berries. Heck,
Yeah. There you go.
Berries only, right?
berries.
that.
Oh yeah, yeah. You eat the regular crunch and leave the berries in there, and then you eat the berries out. It's like Lucky Charms, right? You gotta
Yeah.
eat the cereal and leave the marshmallows. Let's see what else.
I like this. This is fun.
Let's go single or blast double.
Ooh, blast double.
Again, love to coach both moves, but as a competitor, I was more of a double leg guy.
All right, deep dish or thin crust?
Oh, deep dish.
The
Again,
Mormon
those are
Tony pizza.
both. I do like
got
a good
really
thin
good
crust
thin-
pizza.
We got really good thin crust New Haven pizza in
Yeah.
Connecticut. That's pretty famous.
You guys got,
yeah.
or
I mean,
you two can
Daniel's-
meet in the middle. You two can meet in the middle at Chicago and have some.
Yeah, there you go.
yeah, but I'm gonna give this one to Daniel because being on the East Coast, much better pizza out there in Utah.
What's
You want to get prime rib, we're the place. But you know,
what's
Oh,
the
yeah,
delicacy in Utah?
what was that?
What's the delicacy in Utah?
The delicacy in Utah. Well, we're very proud of our fry sauce.
Fry.
A mixture of mayonnaise and ketchup.
Oh,
It was
hey,
invented in Utah.
is that what they say?
Yeah. And supposedly in Utah, everyone eats 2 pounds of rabbit meat but a year on the average, but somebody must be doing my share. But hey, this is a place for prime rib and the fixins, okay?
I believe that fry sauce was developed.
Potatoes, potatoes. We're close to Idaho. Anything with potatoes is good.
That's great, man. Hey, you guys have been a blast, man. I thank you so much for coming on. I hope we can stay in touch and let's do the series, man. I'd love to do it.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, you've been awesome, Dan.
It'd be great. Man. Let's do it again. And when your next book comes out, let's do it again.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Hey, if you guys have any athletes you want on from your school, from your club, from up in Provost, from up in Connecticut, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I got some in mind I could send you.
Yeah, let's do it, man. I'd love to shout out your teams and your kids. It'd be my pleasure.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. You guys have a great night and have a great holiday.
You as well.
Happy holidays.